Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Rachel and I am knitting. Not right now, but most of the time. And I have been knitting. I have a new finished object to share with you. Well, technically two finished objects, but they're part of a set, so we'll count them as one finished object. This is a pair of Riptide Mitts by JST Knitwear Designs, aka Jennifer Shields Toland. I recently finished another design by Jennifer, which was the Riptide 135. I made the Riptide 1, which is a long and narrow scarf. The Riptide 135 is a great pattern that's customizable. You can make anything from a long, narrow scarf to a medium-sized shawl to a large-size shawl. But knitting that pattern sent me down a rabbit hole of JST Knitwear Design patterns. I'll link the FO Diary video for the Riptide 135 up here for you if you'd like to watch that. But yeah, once I made the Riptide 135, I posted about it on Instagram. I tagged JST Knitwear Designs, and that has kind of been the start of a really fun Instagram friendship. And Jennifer has since been so gracious and kind that she dropped all of the Riptide patterns into my Ravelry library as a gift. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for that generosity. When I first stumbled upon the Riptide 135 on Ravelry, I didn't realize that it was part of a series of patterns by Jennifer. She has a Riptide cowl, a Riptide slipover, and Riptide mitts. So let me walk you through my experience knitting this pattern, and I'll tell you whether or not I recommend it for you. Spoiler alert, I do. It's a great pattern and it's really fun to knit. Now let me tell you a little bit about my experience knitting this pattern. Let's start with some details about the pattern itself. It is a paid-for pattern. It's priced at $6 on Ravelry. I will also add that as I'm looking at the pattern page on Ravelry, it looks like there's an opportunity for you to get a free pattern using the code 443. So the number 4 and then the word for, F-O-R, and the number 3. And then you can get 4 patterns for the price of 3, making the cheapest pattern free as you check out. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, head over to the JST Knitwear Designs Ravelry page and do so. But yeah, this is a paid for pattern. Like I said, $6 on Ravelry, and it's a DK weight pattern. I used a skein of fingering weight, and I held it double, meaning I held 2 strands together. And the way that I did that logistically was I wound up my cake of fingering weight yarn. This is from Cesium Yarn on their Merino Sock base. And it is from the Cabin collection, which is a collaborative collection I did with them in September. Your pre-orders should be shipping soon if you ordered from the Cabin collection. But yes, so I used this. This colorway is called Creator of Beauty, and it's inspired by my grandmother. So this was this very special knit for me. Yeah, thought of my grandma a lot, and I can't wait to show these to her. So since it's a DK weight pattern and I did use fingering weight yarn held double, there is some room for error. I think holding fingering weight double is a great sub for DK yarn, but it's not a perfect substitute. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't work so well. In this case, it worked great. These mittens fit me, or I should say fingerless mitts, because they're not really mittens, but they fit me great. There are 3 sizes that you can choose from while you are making this pattern: small, medium, and large. The small size is listed as fitting a 6.5 inch hand circumference. The medium size is an 8-inch hand circumference, and the large size is a 9.5 inch hand circumference. Now, when it comes to hand circumference, I'll tell you, I don't really know much. For instance, I was confused what that measurement actually meant. For instance, does hand circumference mean measured around your hand, including your thumb? Or does hand circumference mean measured around your hand, not including your thumb? So without my thumb there, my hand circumference is about 8 inches. With my thumb there, my hand circumference is about 8.5 inches. So I decided to knit the 8-inch hand circumference, knowing that I've had problems being too loose in my knitting before, and I wanted to mitigate that possibility. And also I figured for hand warmers, particularly hand warmers with this lace motif, there's probably going to be some stretch. So I'd rather have them be the smaller size than the larger size and be falling off my hands. And I'm happy to say that they fit great. And in fact, let me just quickly measure to see how thick they or how wide they actually are. All right, so with the thumb included, these are about, let's see, it would be about 9 inches with the thumb, and about 6.5 without the thumb. So my gauge is not spot on, but it worked out fine. I don't really swatch for accessories because in my mind, the accessory is the swatch. So now I know what my gauge is knitting stockinette and also this lace motif when I'm using fingering weight held double, or at least this fingering weight held double with the corresponding needle size. So that functions as not only a finished item, but also a future swatch. Okay, let's keep going. I've mentioned the yarn I've used, fingering weight held double from Cesium Yarn. I've mentioned the size medium. Now, the rest of the pattern, I followed to a T. I used the needles that were suggested in the pattern, which are 3.75 millimeter for the mitten body, 3.5 millimeter for the ribbing, and 3.25 millimeter for the tubular cast on. And I don't know why I listed those in millimeters, because that's not how my brain thinks of them. So if you're like me, let me list them how you might think. So basically you need a US 5 for the body of the mitt, a US 3, or excuse me, a US 4 for the ribbing, and a US 3 for the tubular cast on. So 3 needle sizes. You can use double pointed needles, or you can use magic loop, or at the widest part, I think you could get away with using small circumference, but I just use magic loop for the entirety of making these. Now let's talk a little bit about the construction without giving too much away, because you know it's a paid for pattern and I want Jennifer to be paid for her very good work. But I'll explain to you the construction in terms of, you know, how this is made, because that might influence your decision of this pattern over another pattern, because we all have our preferences in construction. So you cast on down here at the bottom of the mitt. Then you work up here and you add the thumb stitches. So these are not picked up after the fact. They are not knit separately. You knit in the round all the way up here. You then put the thumb stitches on hold. You finish knitting in the round. You do your ribbing up here, and then you do a tubular bind off. Now, Jennifer has links to video tutorials she's made of the tubular bind off and the tubular cast on, both of which were very helpful. Or at least I should say the tubular cast on is very helpful. I don't think I looked at the tubular bind off video because I just have that in my brain already. But the tubular cast on video was very helpful for me. They're so cute. Look how cute they are. Now, the the reason that this is in the Riptide family of patterns is because it has that same Riptide lace motif. You can see, just like with the Riptide 135, there is a panel or a column of lace that is separated by a panel of stockinette. And on either side of the lace is a panel of broken rib. I think that's what it's called. But basically ribbing that's not knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl every row, but it's alternating every row. So a really, really beautiful finished object. And then on the inside of the mitt, on the palm of your hand, it's just plain stockinette, bookended by that ribbing. So just really, really beautiful, really dainty, delicate, sweet little mitts. So I'm very, very happy with these. I knit these over the course of 24 hours. I think that if I was only taking into account the actual knitting time, it was about 8 to 9 hours of knitting to complete these. So they are not a labor-intensive knit. They are not a time-consuming knit. I mean, 8 to 9 hours is a long period of time, but if you compare that to a sweater that might take 60, 70, 80 plus hours, an 8-hour project is relatively fast. So this was a great knit, great palette cleanser, because I was really, really wanting to cast something on, but I was daunted by knowing, like, if I cast on a sweater, something that I'm itching to make, it's still going to be like weeks of my life that I'm going to be knitting this before I can actually have it as a finished object to wear. Whereas these, I caked up the yarn and not even 24 hours later, I had a finished wearable item. So very, very happy with that. I still have a good amount of this yarn left. I'm weighing it right now on my little scale here. It says I have 53 grams left of this Creator of Beauty skein, and the mittens weigh 58 grams, 57, 58 grams. In the kitchen, that scale has told me 57 grams. On this scale I have at my desk, it's waffling between 57 and 58 grams. So somewhere in that ballpark. So this would be a great stash buster for that one random weight or one random skein of fingering weight yarn that you have just sitting around, or one random skein of DK weight yarn. You could probably use a worsted weight yarn. I would just size down and maybe make, you know, a smaller size or two than what you actually want. So these were great. This would be a great gift knit if there's someone in your life that you know needs a pair of fingerless mitts and you are willing to devote 8, 9, 10 hours of your life to demonstrate your care for them, then consider this pattern. Another thing that I want to say about the process of knitting this pattern is that they are essentially the same except for the thumb placement. Obviously, they're not identical because one mitten has the thumb on the left side and one mitten has the thumb on the right side. Or that might be the opposite of what you see when this is like uploaded to YouTube, because I think maybe it is reversed. But anyway, they're mirror images of each other. So you can't just make two mittens the same, because then you'll have two right-handed mittens or two left-handed mittens. But other than which side you are doing the thumb on, they're pretty much the same. Now, with the thumbs being on different sides, that means the order of your increases are different. For instance, you have a make one left first for one thumb and a make one right second for that thumb, and then it's reversed for the alternating mitt. So just keep that in mind. You can't just, you know, churn them out all the same, all identical, because they are different in that they are the mirror image of one another. In terms of knitting this, the pattern, much like the Riptide 135, is very easy and meditative once you get it under your belt. This lace motif is essentially a 4-row repeat, and the even rows are identical. So it's really only 2 rows, rows 1 and 3, that you need to memorize, and they're different from each other. Rows 2 and 4 are the same. Once you have done a few repeats, you can read your knitting or read your fabric and know which of those 2 rows you're on. So again, great meditative knit, great TV knit, great conversation knit, with the caveat that maybe get started first, get through a few lace repeats before you try to, off-road in the knitting landscape, if that makes sense. Also, there are some areas that you need to follow the pattern. For instance, after you put the thumb on hold, there is an increase that you need to pay attention for. Otherwise, your stitch count will be off and you'll be confused. Not because that happened to me, of course. Just kidding, it totally did. So don't get too big for your britches when you're knitting this pattern. Make sure that you keep your humility, keep your ego in check, and follow the pattern. Don't think that you know everything. But yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on knitting this pattern. So it's short and sweet finished object diary video because this was a short and sweet pattern to knit. I have since cast on the Riptide Slipover, but it was way too big. So I need to size down 2 sizes because my gauge is all off. I'm using a really light fingering held double for this. So again, that goes to show sometimes fingering held double works great for DK weight. Sometimes it doesn't and you need to make adjustments. So this is a light fingering, a bamboo linen for the Riptide Slipover, and it's supposed to only be the width of basically to cover my neck. But as you can see, it goes a little further than that. So we'll be continuing this FO Diaries Riptide series, just not as quickly as maybe I had hoped, because I do need to start the slipover from scratch. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the Riptide mitts. I love how these turned out. They fit so well. I love how they go down my wrist. I actually wore these today while I was knitting my allotted Advent knitting rows because it was quite cold in my house and I am adamant not to turn the heat on yet because I want to enjoy the cold. And it really wasn't that bad if you get, a sweater on and some fingerless mitts. So yeah, fashion and function. What could be better? Nothing. So that's all I have for this video. If you do choose to make the Riptide mitts, please let me know. I want to see your projects, and I am especially interested and curious to see what yarn you use for it. So let me know if you end up doing that. But I'll leave the video here and go on with my traditional sign off. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you don't already, and hit that notification bell to be notified of my next upload. Last but not least, head over to Instagram and follow me at Rachel is Knitting if you don't already. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.